Vivid verses.
The dog park at dawn was James Holbrook's compromise with chaos. His rescue dog, a neurotic Australian shepherd mix named Copernicus, needed 90 minutes of sustained activity every morning or the apartment paid the price. James had done the math. Leaving at 5:47 a.m. gave him the parking lot to himself, allowed Coper to sprint until exhausted, and still got James to his desk by 8:15 with coffee and a clear head. The calculus worked most days. He stood near the fence, Bluetooth earpiece tucked against his jaw, reviewing a client's portfolio diversification while Coper executed figure eights across the empty field. The May air carried that particular Indianapolis blend of humidity and fresh-cut grass that reminded him why he'd left Boston. Lower overhead, emerging markets, fewer people who'd known him when he was someone else's employee. "Mr. Chun, I understand the temptation," James said, watching Coper leap over a puddle with the intensity of an Olympic hurdler. But tech sector overconcentration is precisely what tanked portfolios in 2000. Your 32% exposure puts you at significant risk if we see correction, which, given current valuations, is a question of when, not if. He paused, letting Chun process. People needed silence to convince themselves. James had learned that in his first consulting job, watching his boss talk clients out of good advice. 15%. That's my recommendation. We rotate the remainder into dividend aristocrats and municipal bonds. You get stability, tax advantages, and you sleep better. The question isn't whether the market will reward patience. It's whether you'll still be solvent when it does. Chin agreed. They always did eventually. James ended the call and checked his watch. 6:23 a.m. Coper had another 18 minutes of mandated chaos before the transition to civilized behavior. That's when he noticed her. She was crouched near the water fountain, trying to untangle a golden retriever from its own leash. The dog had somehow wrapped the lead around a bench leg, its owner, and what appeared to be a discarded coffee cup. James recognized the particular brand of canine enthusiasm that created such disasters. Coper had once hogtied him to a parking meter. The woman wore running clothes and an expression of amused resignation. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she approached the problem methodically, first freeing the dog, then the bench, then herself. No drama, no cursing, just efficient problem solving. Coper, naturally, spotted the golden retriever and decided they were soulmates. 80 pounds of overstimulated Aussie mix rocketed across the park like a furry missile. James moved without thinking, years of Coper-induced reflexes kicking in. He intercepted his dog 3 feet from collision, catching the trailing leash and pivoting to absorb momentum. "Sorry," he said, keeping his grip firm as Coper vibrated with the need to make friends. He hasn't mastered the concept of personal space. The woman straightened, freed from her tangle, and smiled. "Neither has Murphy. I think they get along." She had the kind of smile that reached her eyes first, genuine, not performative. James had learned to spot the difference during client meetings where smiles often meant the opposite of friendliness. "Murphy and Copernicus," James said. "Either a law firm or a disaster waiting to happen. Why not both?" She checked her dog's collar, ensuring everything was secure. "I'm Rachel." "James." He released Coper, who immediately began the ritual sniffing ceremony with Murphy. Fair warning. Coper thinks boundaries are suggestions. Murphy thinks the entire park is his personal kingdom, Rachel said. "I'm guessing we're both here early to avoid the crowds?" James nodded. Crowds stress him out, which is ironic, since isolation also stresses him out. He's essentially a furry anxiety disorder. Rachel laughed. A real laugh, not the polite titter he usually got from women at networking events. "Murphy's terrified of thunder, but thinks he can fight a garbage truck. Dogs are professionally inconsistent. They fell into an easy pattern after that. Rachel showed up most mornings, always between 5:50 and 6 a.m. They'd exchange greetings, let the dogs play, and talk while maintaining a respectful distance. James learned she worked in logistics for a freight company, managed their entire Midwest routing system, and had opinions about supply chain optimization that were both informed and passionate. "People think logistics is just moving boxes," she said one morning, watching Murphy attempt to herd a confused beagle. "It's actually applied game theory. Every decision cascades. You optimize one route, you create bottlenecks in 3 others. The whole system has to breathe together." James found himself looking forward to these conversations more than he'd anticipated. Rachel didn't ask what he did, didn't fish for information, didn't perform the elaborate social dance he'd come to expect from people who smelled money or ambition. She talked about her work with the same analytical precision he brought to his own, and she listened when he mentioned a challenging client without immediately offering solutions or sympathy. She just processed the information and asked intelligent questions. 3 weeks into their accidental morning routine, his phone rang during a particularly energetic wrestling match between Coper and Murphy. James checked the screen. Terry Vance, his largest client and biggest headache. "I need to take this," he said to Rachel. She nodded, moving a polite distance away while corralling Murphy. "Terry," James said, injecting warmth into his voice that he didn't feel. "Good morning. We need to talk about the Henderson acquisition." Terry's voice carried the aggressive brightness of someone who'd already made a decision and was shopping for validation. "I'm thinking we liquidate the Brightstar portfolio and go all in on Zenith Industries. My brother-in-law says." James felt the familiar tightening in his chest. Terry's brother-in-law was a personal injury attorney whose financial advice had already cost Terry 6 figures. But Terry was also responsible for 30% of James's current revenue, which meant this conversation required surgical precision. "Let me stop you there," James said, watching Coper attempt a backflip. "Your brother-in-law is a brilliant litigator. I've seen his track record. But Zenith Industries has a debt-to-equity ratio that would make a loan shark nervous, and their Q4 earnings report had more red flags than a communist parade. Going all in means concentrated risk during potential sector contraction. Is that really the exposure you want when Henderson is already leveraged?" Silence on the other end. James could practically hear Terry's ego wrestling with his wallet. "What do you recommend?" Terry finally asked. "Partial position, 20% from Brightstar, diversified across 3 Henderson subsidiaries with different risk profiles. You get growth potential without betting the farm. I'll send you the analysis by noon." Terry agreed. They always did, eventually. James ended the call and found Rachel watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not judgment, not curiosity, something closer to recognition. "Sorry," he said. "Occupational hazard. I run a financial consultancy, and some clients require more hand-holding than others." "You're good at that," Rachel said. "The hand-holding, it's mostly pattern recognition. People want permission to make smart decisions. My job is giving them that permission without making them feel stupid for needing it." Rachel smiled. "That's what I do with drivers who can't figure out why their routes keep running late. Half the job is making people feel smart while they learn to be less dumb." James laughed. It occurred to him, not for the first time, that Rachel might be the first person in Indianapolis who'd made him laugh without trying. The transition from dog park acquaintances to actual friends happened gradually, then suddenly. Rachel started bringing coffee, good coffee, from a local roaster that didn't believe in burning beans. James reciprocated with information about which routes around the park had the least broken glass. They graduated from dogs to work to the kind of random observations that filled comfortable silences. James learned that Rachel had moved to Indianapolis from Cleveland after watching her entire friend group self-destruct through what she called relationship drama Olympics, manufactured conflicts, loyalty tests, strategic jealousy. She'd excise herself from the toxicity and started over. "I just got tired," she said one morning, absently scratching Murphy's ears. Tired of people treating relationships like competitive sports. The games, the testing, the constant need to create problems just to see if the other person would fix them. It was exhausting. James thought about his ex-girlfriend, Catherine, who'd once hidden his car keys to see if he'd cancel an important meeting. He called an Uber and ended the relationship in the same breath. "I don't have time for games," he said. Rachel met his eyes. "Good. Neither do I." Something shifted in that moment, an understanding that required no negotiation, no clarification. They were adults who'd survived enough nonsense to recognize its absence as valuable. 2 weeks later, James asked her to dinner. Not the dog park, not coffee, actual dinner at a restaurant that required reservations. Rachel said yes without hesitation, without coyness, without the elaborate dance of pretending to check her schedule. "Thursday works. Text me the address." The date was exactly what James had hoped for and nothing like what he'd expected. Rachel showed up on time, ordered without performing dietary restrictions, and asked intelligent questions about his business without the edge of calculation he'd learned to recognize in people who wanted something. "Starting a consultancy from scratch must have been terrifying," she said over dessert. "No safety net, no fallback plan." "The safety net was the terrifying part," James said. "Working for someone else meant my success was always filtered through their judgment. Starting over meant my failures were mine, but so were my wins. I'll take that trade." Rachel nodded, like she understood completely. "I turned down a promotion last year because it meant moving to corporate in Chicago. My boss thought I was insane, more money, better title, all that. But it also meant politics, positioning, playing games with people who were better at games and logistics. I'm good at logistics. I'm terrible at pretending incompetence is strategy." James felt something click into place. "You optimize for different variables." "Exactly." Rachel smiled. "Most people optimize for status or salary and then wonder why they're miserable. I optimize for doing work I'm good at with people who aren't actively sabotaging each other. Turns out that's worth more than a fancy business card." They talked until the restaurant staff started stacking chairs. James walked her to her car, and when he asked if she wanted to do this again, she said yes before he finished the sentence. The relationship developed with the same efficient logic that had characterized their friendship. No games, no tests, no manufactured uncertainty. Rachel said what she meant. James did what he said he'd do. They made each other's lives easier instead of harder. A concept so simple it seemed almost revolutionary. When James mentioned he was interviewing for an executive assistant, Rachel asked intelligent questions about what the role required. When he found a candidate who seemed perfect until the background check revealed 3 jobs in 18 months, Rachel listened to his frustration and then said, "So keep looking. You need reliable, not desperate." She was right. He kept looking. 6 weeks into dating, Rachel mentioned her brother was having a birthday barbecue in Bloomington. "It's family and friends, maybe 20 people. Fair warning, my mother will ask if you're serious about me within 10 minutes of meeting you." "What should I tell her?" James asked. "The truth, probably." Rachel shrugged. "I'm serious about you. If you're not, better to know now." James appreciated that kind of directness. "I'm serious." "Good. My mother will be thrilled. My brother will grill you about cryptocurrency. Be prepared." The barbecue was exactly as advertised. Rachel's mother, Patricia, was warm and intimidating in equal measure. Her brother, David, worked in IT, and had opinions about blockchain that were enthusiastic but not entirely informed. James navigated both conversations with the same diplomatic skill he used with clients, affirming, redirecting, finding common ground. Rachel watched from across the patio, a small smile playing at her lips. When James finally extracted himself and joined her, she handed him a beer. "You survived," she said. "Your mother thinks I'm secretly a Democrat," James said. "Your brother wants me to invest in something called Megacoin that definitely sounds like a scam." "Both accurate assessments of their personalities," Rachel said. "Thank you for not being weird about it." "Why would I be weird? Some guys get territorial about meeting families, where they perform, try too hard, make promises they won't keep, act like it's an audition." She took a sip of her own beer. "You just talk to them like people." It was nice. James had learned, over the years, that the hardest things to explain were the things that seemed obvious. He didn't know how to articulate that performing for approval felt exhausting, that authenticity was simply more efficient than pretense. So he just said, "Your family seems nice. Why would I pretend to be someone else?" Rachel kissed him then, quick and simple, but full of meaning. 3 months in, the first real test arrived wearing a designer suit and James's business card. Her name was Claire Donovan, and she represented Hartwell Financial Group, one of the mid-sized investment firms that had been circling James's consultancy like sharks sensing blood. They made 3 acquisition offers in the past 18 months, each more aggressive than the last. James had declined all of them. Claire invited him to lunch at Tavern on the Square, a downtown restaurant where deal-makers went to look successful. James agreed because saying no would have been a tell. She was beautiful in the calculated way of people who understood beauty as currency. Perfect makeup, perfect posture, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. James recognized the type immediately. He dated several variants in Boston before learning that beauty and compatibility were unrelated variables. "James," she said, extending a hand with fingers that barely touched his. "Thank you for meeting. I know you're impossibly busy." "Never too busy for interesting conversations," James said, settling into the practiced rhythm of negotiation. "Though I should mention up front, if this is another acquisition pitch, my answer hasn't changed." Claire laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a calculated breeze. "Direct. I appreciate that. But no, this isn't about acquisition. Hartwell wants to propose a partnership." She laid out the terms over appetizers. Hartwell would provide capital, infrastructure, and client pipeline. James would maintain operational control and creative authority. 70-30 split, with James retaining majority ownership. It was a good offer. Almost too good. "What's the catch?" James asked. "No catch. We think you're building something valuable, and we want to accelerate the timeline." Claire leaned forward slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough to narrow the space between them. "You're talented, James. Visionary, even. Hartwell recognizes that." There was the shift from business to something else. James had seen this move before, the subtle introduction of personal interest as negotiating leverage. Claire was attractive, successful, and clearly accustomed to men who confused attention with affection. James was not one of those men. "I appreciate the offer," he said evenly. "Send me the full proposal, and I'll review with my attorney. If the terms are as advantageous as you suggest, we can schedule a follow-up." He watched Claire recalibrate, recognizing that flirtation wasn't landing. "Of course. I'll have our legal team prepare everything by Friday." They finished lunch with efficient professionalism. Claire paid, a power move that James noted but didn't contest. As they stood to leave, she touched his arm. "One more thing," she said. "Hartwell is hosting a client appreciation event next Thursday. Dinner, networking, the usual. I'd love for you to attend as my guest." No pressure, just an opportunity to see what partnership might look like. James considered. Attending would signal interest. Declining would signal nothing had changed. "I'll check my schedule," he said, which was consultant speak for probably not. He told Rachel about the lunch that evening over takeout from her favorite Thai place. She listened without interrupting, chopsticks moving with the same efficient precision she brought to everything. "So what are you going to do?" she asked when he finished. "Review the proposal. Probably decline. Hartwell's been circling too long. This feels like a different approach to the same goal." Rachel nodded. "The woman, Claire, she hit on you." James appreciated that Rachel phrased it as fact, not question. Subtly, more like opening the door to see if I'd walk through. "And you didn't." "I'm dating someone," James said. "Why would I?" Rachel smiled, but something in her expression sharpened. Some guys would take that as validation. Beautiful woman shows interest, even if they're not interested back. Ego boost. "My ego doesn't need external validation," James said. "And manipulating someone's attraction for business advantage seems exhausting." "Good answer." Rachel set down her chopsticks. "Are you going to the networking event?" "Probably not. Unless you think I should." "I think you should do whatever serves your business interests," Rachel said. "I trust you to make that call. But if you go, I'd appreciate knowing." James felt something warm spread through his chest. Not gratitude, exactly, but recognition. Rachel wasn't testing him. She was establishing a boundary that respected both his autonomy and her own comfort. No manipulation, no ultimatum, just clear communication. "I won't go," he said. "The optics are muddy, and I don't think the partnership offer is serious. Hartwell wants acquisition or nothing. This is just a different pitch." Rachel reached across the table, squeezing his hand once. "Okay, want to watch something terrible on TV and make fun of it?" They did. The crisis passed without drama, without conflict, without any of the manufactured tension that James had come to expect from relationships. It was, he reflected later, almost suspiciously easy. The proposal from Hartwell arrived on Friday, exactly as promised. James read it twice, made notes, and forwarded it to his attorney with instructions to identify the poison pills. Sarah Chun, his lawyer, called back within 2 hours. "It's sophisticated," she said without preamble, "but it's also a trap. The majority ownership clause includes performance metrics that trigger ownership transfer if not met. The timeline for those metrics is 18 months, functionally impossible given current market conditions. You'd hit year 2 with Hartwell owning 60%, then 70%, then everything." James had suspected as much. "So it's acquisition with extra steps." "Exactly. Predatory, but legal. If you sign this, you'll spend 18 months working for Hartwell while they slowly consume your company." "Thanks, Sarah." Send them a polite decline. He was ending the call when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Claire. Wanted to check in about Thursday's event. Hope to see you there." James deleted the message without responding. If Claire wanted professional communication, she could use email. The following Tuesday, his executive assistant, Monica, quit without notice. James arrived at the office to find her desk cleared, a resignation letter printed on company letterhead, and absolute chaos in his client management system. Monica had been organizing his files, calendar, and correspondence for 11 months. She'd been competent, if uninspired, exactly what James needed in an assistant. Now she was gone, and James had 3 client meetings, 2 conference calls, and a presentation deadline in the next 72 hours. He spent Tuesday afternoon conducting triage, rescheduling what could be moved, preparing what couldn't, and trying to reconstruct Monica's organizational system from scattered files and cryptic folder names. By 9 p.m., he made progress, but not enough. He still had 40 hours of work and 20 hours until his first meeting. Rachel found him at his apartment near midnight, surrounded by file folders and laptop screens. Copernicus curled miserably in the corner because his dinner had been late. Monica quit, James said before Rachel could ask. No notice, no transition plan, just gone. I got critical meetings, and half my files are organized using some system only she understood. Rachel set down her bag, fed Copernicus, and turned to James with the same calm assessment she'd shown that first morning at the dog park. Okay, she said. Show me what you need. Rachel, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to help. Show me the system. James walked her through his client structure, the filing logic, the upcoming deadlines. Rachel asked clarifying questions, took notes, and within 20 minutes had identified the core problem. Monica had been using a hybrid system, partly digital, partly physical files, with no master index. Everything was technically organized, but the organization only made sense if you already knew where everything was. This is fixable, Rachel said, but it'll take time. When's your first meeting? Thursday at 10 a.m. And you need what before then? James outlined the requirements: client history, portfolio analysis, 3-month projections, competitive comparison data. Rachel listened, nodded, and made a decision. I'm taking Wednesday and Thursday off, she said. I got vacation days. We'll fix this. Rachel, that's your vacation time. I'm using it to help you. That's allowed. She pulled out her phone, already typing. I'll text my supervisor now. You're going to eat something, sleep for 6 hours, and then we're going to build you a real filing system. James wanted to argue. The argument died in his throat because Rachel's expression made clear this wasn't negotiation. It was decision implemented. Thank you, he said finally. Thank me by eating something that isn't coffee and letting Coper outside. The next 2 days blurred into a marathon of organization, analysis, and system building. Rachel approached James's chaos with the same methodical precision she brought to logistics. Identify the problem, map the dependencies, optimize the workflow. She created a master index. She color-coded file folders. She built a digital backup system with redundant cloud storage. She reorganized his calendar using time blocking that actually respected human attention spans. And she did all of it while asking intelligent questions about his business. Not because she was trying to impress him, but because understanding the context made her solutions better. Why are you tracking client communications in 3 different places? She asked Wednesday afternoon, knee-deep in email folders. Monica started using the CRM, then switched to spreadsheets, then started keeping notes in a separate document. James said, I should have caught that earlier. You were focused on the actual consulting, Rachel said. That's appropriate division of labor. But you need 1 system, not 3. I'm consolidating everything into the CRM with automated backups. From now on, single source of truth. She worked with the focused intensity of someone solving a puzzle that offended her on a professional level. James found himself watching her sometimes, marveling at the casual competence, the lack of performance or expectation of praise. Rachel wasn't helping him to earn points or demonstrate value. She saw a problem she could solve, so she solved it. By Wednesday evening, his files were organized. By Thursday morning, his presentation was polished. Rachel sat in his home office, double-checking the client portfolio analysis while James showered and dressed for the meeting. You're going to be fine, she said when he emerged. Everything's ready. Your talking points are on page 3 of the deck, client history is in the appendix, and I set up automated reminders for follow-up actions. James looked at her, hair pulled back in the same practical ponytail from the dog park, wearing yesterday's clothes because she'd worked through the night, absolutely zero expectation of recognition or reward on her face. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You don't need to thank me. We're partners. Partners make each other's lives easier. She stood, stretching. Now go wow your client. I'm going to take Murphy for a long walk and then sleep for 14 hours. The meeting went perfectly. The client was impressed. The presentation landed, and James secured a contract extension worth 6 figures. He texted Rachel the news immediately. Crushed it. Contract signed. You're magic. Her response came 2 hours later. You crushed it. I just organized files. Now stop texting and finish your other meetings. XO. That weekend, James tried to plan something special. Dinner somewhere expensive, maybe a weekend trip to celebrate. Rachel vetoed all of it. I don't need grand gestures, she said. I need you to interview for a new assistant who won't organize files like a conspiracy theorist and maybe buy better coffee for your office. That's it. That's it. Oh, and take Coper to the dog park. He's been patient, but he's starting to eat your furniture. They went to the dog park. Murphy and Coper wrestled with their usual chaos, while James tried to articulate something he didn't have words for. Most people would have made a big deal out of helping, he finally said. Kept score, expected reciprocation, reminded me what they sacrificed. Most people treat relationships like balance sheets, Rachel said. Everything has to be even. Every favor needs repayment. That's exhausting. I helped because I could, and because your crisis was solvable. You do the same for me. I would, James said. But how do you know that? Rachel smiled. Because you're you. You don't make promises you won't keep, and you don't keep score. If I needed help, you'd help. That's what partners do. James felt something settle in his chest. Certainty, maybe, or recognition that he'd found something rare enough to be valuable. I'm in love with you, he said. Rachel turned, meeting his eyes with that same direct gaze from the dog park. Good. I'm in love with you too. No performance, no testing, no manufacture drama. Just honest recognition of what they'd built together. Claire Donovan made one more attempt. She called James's office directly 3 weeks later, bypassing email to request an in-person meeting. James agreed because declining would have been petty and pettiness was inefficient. They met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, time-boxed by Claire's next appointment. She looked polished as always, but there was an edge now, something frustrated beneath the professional veneer. I'm disappointed you declined our partnership offer, she said without preamble. It was genuinely advantageous. Your legal structure included performance metrics designed to trigger ownership transfer, James said evenly. That's not partnership. That's acquisition with a longer timeline. Claire had the grace to look briefly embarrassed. You had it reviewed. Of course I did. I'm not an idiot, and neither are you. So let's skip the part where we pretend Hartwell was offering something other than a sophisticated hostile takeover. Fair enough. Claire stirred her coffee with unnecessary precision. For what it's worth, the personal interest was real. I wasn't just trying to manipulate you. James believed her, or at least believed she believed it. I'm in a relationship. Even if I weren't, mixing business with personal complications seems counterproductive. She's lucky, Claire said. I'm lucky, James corrected. Rachel makes my life better instead of more complicated. That's rare enough to be valuable. Claire studied him for a moment, and something like understanding flickered across her expression. You really mean that? Why wouldn't I? Most men I meet treat relationships like negotiations. Maximize advantage, minimize vulnerability, keep exit strategies ready. She smiled, but it was sadder than her usual performance. You're either refreshingly honest or dangerously naive. Neither, James said. I'm efficient. Drama costs more than it returns. Rachel and I optimize for the same variables. Respect, competence, making each other's lives easier. Everything else is noise. And if it stops being easy, James considered, then we talk about it like adults and make decisions based on what serves us both. but I don't think it will. We're too good at communication. Claire finished her coffee and stood. Well, good luck, James. I mean that. Hartwell will keep watching your firm, but I'll make sure the personal approach stays off the table. Appreciated. They shook hands, and Claire left. James stayed to finish his own coffee, thinking about efficiency, compatibility, and the quiet revolution of finding someone who treated partnership as addition instead of subtraction. 6 months later, James hired a new executive assistant named Tom, who organized files like a human being and made coffee that didn't taste like burnt regret. His consultancy grew. Rachel got promoted to senior logistics manager. Copernicus and Murphy remained professionally chaotic. They moved in together on a Saturday in November, combining households with the same practical efficiency that characterized everything else. Rachel's furniture was better, so most of James's went to charity. James's kitchen equipment was superior, so Rachel's got donated. They negotiated closet space like adults, divided chores based on competence, and never once argued about whose approach was correct. They just picked the approach that worked best and moved forward. James's mother visited for Thanksgiving and pulled him aside during dessert prep. She's different from Catherine, his mother said carefully. Yes, James agreed. Rachel doesn't play games. Do you love her? Very much. His mother smiled. The real smile, not the polite one she deployed at charity functions. Good. She makes you laugh. That's more important than people think. Rachel made him laugh daily. She also made him think, challenged his assumptions, and supported his ambitions without expecting him to shrink to accommodate her ego. She was brilliant and direct and completely allergic to bullshit, which made her either perfect or impossible, depending on your tolerance for honesty. James's tolerance was infinite. On New Year's Eve, they skipped parties in favor of takeout and streaming something terrible they could mock together. Murphy and Coper were passed out in a pile near the fireplace, exhausted from a day at the dog park. Rachel was curled against James's side, her head on his shoulder. This is nice, she said during a commercial break. It is, James agreed. I'm glad we're doing this. Me too. Rachel shifted a look at him. I mean it. I watched so many of my friends destroy perfectly good relationships because they needed drama to feel alive. They'd manufacture problems, test boundaries, create chaos just to prove the other person would tolerate it. And then they'd wonder why everything collapsed. You're not like that, James said. Neither are you. That's why this works. She kissed him, simple and sweet and full of uncomplicated affection. We make each other's lives better. Everything else is just details. James pulled her closer, thinking about efficiency, optimization, and the rare gift of finding someone who treated partnership as mutual elevation instead of competitive survival. Outside, fireworks started early. Some neighbor too excited to wait for midnight. Coper raised his head, decided the noise wasn't worth investigating, and went back to sleep. Should we make resolutions? Rachel asked. Do you want to? Not really. We're doing fine. We are, James agreed. They were still on the couch at midnight, half asleep and completely content when the real fireworks started. Rachel stirred just enough to murmur, Happy New Year, and James responded in kind. No drama, no manufactured romance, no performance for an audience that didn't exist. Just two people who'd figured out that the best relationships weren't the ones that burned brightest. They were the ones that sustained heat over time, providing warmth without consuming fuel. James fell asleep thinking about compound interest, efficient markets, and the quiet miracle of finding someone who understood that love, like investing, worked best as a long-term strategy. Spring arrived with the usual Indianapolis mood swings. 70 degrees one day, freezing the next. James's consultancy continued growing. He hired 2 junior analysts and started fielding acquisition offers from firms that actually understood what partnership meant. Rachel's logistics division won a regional efficiency award for route optimization. She celebrated by buying better running shoes and taking Murphy to a new dog park with actual shade trees. They fell into comfortable rhythms. Mornings at the dog park when weather permitted, evenings cooking together or ordering in, weekends split between work that needed doing and rest that earned its keep. No crisis, no drama, no sudden revelations that required relationship recalibration. It was, James reflected one morning while watching Cooper attempt to teach Murphy advanced herding techniques, almost suspiciously functional. "You're thinking too hard," Rachel said, appearing with coffee. "I can see the gears turning. Just appreciating this," James said. "All of it. Good. Me too." She handed him the coffee. "Tom called, by the way. Want to know if you're free for lunch to discuss the Davidson portfolio." "Tell him yes. Also, remind him to send the quarterly reports to Sarah for review before distribution." "Already did. I'm not your assistant, but I do check your calendar when you leave it open on a laptop." Rachel smiled. "You're double-booked Thursday at 3. Tom scheduled a client call over your strategy session." James checked his phone. She was right. "How do you even notice these things?" "Logistics training. I see patterns." "Your patterns are very loud." She kissed his cheek. "Fix the scheduling conflict. I'm taking Murphy to the park. Cooper's welcome to join if you want the house to yourself." They loaded both dogs into Rachel's car and drove to the park. The early morning light turned everything gold and soft, and James felt that same quiet certainty he'd felt when Rachel helped with his client crisis. Recognition that he'd found something rare enough to be valuable. "I want to marry you," he said. Rachel didn't look surprised. "Okay. That's it? Okay. Were you expecting something more dramatic?" She parked the car, turned to face him. "We live together. We love each other. We make each other's lives better. Marriage is just making that official. So yes, okay. I want to marry you too." James laughed. The real laugh. The one Rachel seemed to pull from him without effort. Most people would expect a proposal. Most people are exhausting. "You want to get married? I want to get married. We're both adults who can make decisions without theatrical productions." She paused. "Although if you already bought a ring, I won't say no to seeing it. I haven't bought a ring yet. Then buy one. Or don't. I'm not particular about jewelry." Rachel opened the car door, releasing Murphy and Cooper into the wild. "But if we're doing this, I want a small wedding. Family and close friends, good food, no drama." "That sounds perfect," James said. And it was. They married on a Saturday in September at a small venue outside Indianapolis that specialized in intimate gatherings. 50 people, family, close friends, colleagues who become friends. No grand gestures, no elaborate productions. Just two people who decided that partnership was worth formalizing in front of people they loved. Rachel wore a simple dress that made her look radiant without trying. James wore a suit that fit properly and didn't require adjustment. They wrote their own vows, keeping them short and honest. Promises to keep making each other's lives better, to communicate clearly, to never keep score or manufacture drama. "I promise to always tell you the truth," Rachel said, "even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." "I promise to trust your competence," James replied, "and to ask for help when I need it instead of pretending I don't." They exchanged rings, simple bands, practical and beautiful. The officiant pronounced them married. People applauded. Murphy and Cooper, who'd been relegated to Rachel's brother's supervision, barked enthusiastically from the back of the venue. At the reception, James's mother cornered Rachel near the cake. "You're good for him," she said without preamble. James needed someone who wouldn't tolerate nonsense. "You don't tolerate nonsense." "Neither does he," Rachel said. "That's why it works." "I'm glad." His mother smiled. Welcome to the family. We're mostly functional, though James's aunt will try to sell you essential oils. Just smile and decline. The party wound down early, by design, not accident. Rachel had insisted on ending before people got too drunk or too tired, maximizing good memories and minimizing awkward farewells. They left around 9, driving home while the sun set and the world turned soft with evening light. That went well, James said. It did, Rachel agreed. No drama, no disasters, no last-minute revelations. Disappointed, relieved. I had enough drama watching my friends implode. I'll take boring and functional over exciting and chaotic every time. James reached across the car, taking her hand. Thank you. For what? For being exactly who you are. For never playing games. For making everything easier instead of harder. Rachel squeezed his hand. That's what partners do. They drove home in comfortable silence. Two people who'd figured out that the best relationships weren't the ones that required constant maintenance. They were the ones that maintained themselves through consistent mutual effort. At home, they changed into comfortable clothes and took the dogs to the park one last time, watching them chase each other through the twilight while the world settled into night. James thought about efficiency, compound returns, and the quiet miracle of finding someone who understood that love, like any valuable investment, worked best when both parties optimized for the long term. Happy? Rachel asked. Very, James said, and he was. The end came not with drama, but with quiet satisfaction. The recognition that they'd built something sustainable, something that would last not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. No games, no tests, no manufactured uncertainty. Just two people who decided that making each other's lives better was worth more than any alternative. In the distance, Copernicus and Murphy chased shadows through the grass, professionally chaotic and completely content. James watched them and smiled, thinking that maybe the best things in life were the ones that didn't require explanation. They just worked. Rachel leaned against his shoulder, warm and present, and exactly where she wanted to be. Ready to go home? She asked. Yeah, James said. Let's go home.
Thanks for listening.